Good morning, all of you. I welcome you all to Ansarkari. So, in this video, we are going to discuss important news articles for the UPSC Civil Services examination for 10th of January 2023. So, our Prime Minister says there is a need to respect democratic traditions. The statement comes in the backdrop of the protests that are going on in Brazil. So, the people they are supporting the ex-president of Brazil, who is the Bolsonaro, and right now the president is Mr. Lula da Silva. So he is basically he supports leftist ideas, and Mr. Lula he blamed Mr. Bolsonaro for inflaming his supporters after a campaign of baseless allegations of election fraud. So we can say Bolsonaro supporters, they are now protesting, and you can see in the picture that they are there at the National Congress in Brasilia. That is, Brasilia is the capital of Brazil. So, in this backdrop, our Prime Minister says that we need to respect the democratic traditions. Then, coming to the issue between the Tamil Nadu governor and the chief minister. So we saw that the governor he walked out of the house as CM objected to the deviation from the speech. So when the governor was addressing the house, the legislative assembly, he was addressing, and the speech that he had to deliver was obviously it is given by the government that is there in power, and it is as per convention he has to deliver what is written in the speech. But the governor he skipped a paragraph, and that led to the whole issue. So he skipped a paragraph that was containing references to the national and the regional stalwarts and the term Dravidian model of governance. So he skipped this thing, and this led to the whole issue there. Then you should be knowing that Griffin vulture, it is also known as the Himalayan vulture, and it is near threatened. So its IUCN status is near threatened, and it is called an old world vulture, which is native to the Himalayas and the adjoining Tibetan plateau. Then Kerala wants to strike a balance between ecology and human life. So Kerala has presented a case for exempting human habitations and areas where the government, semi-government, and public and private establishments they have come up within the ambit of the buffer zone. So the Kerala government is preventing construction of human habitations in the buffer zones where there are already public institutions and public buildings. So that is there, and you should be knowing that in the core protected area no activity is permitted. However, few activities are permitted in the buffer zone. Then coming to the editorial page, a step towards fighting corruption. So recently, Supreme Court in its judgment in December 2022 in the Neeraj Datta case, the Constitution bench of the Supreme Court, it came down heavily on corruption among the public servants in the country and lowered the bar for the quantum of evidence that is required to convict persons charged with corruption. So this is, we can say this judgment is a step towards preventing this practice of corruption that is there. And on many occasions previously also, the Supreme Court gave equally strong expression to the scourge that afflicts our public administration. But in spite of its unequivocal stand, the we can say the judgments that were delivered by the Supreme Court, still the extent of corruption in public life remains undiminished. So we will be looking what did the ruling say when it basically supported that it basically lowered the bar for the quantum of evidence that would be now required. So court has now laid down that even if prosecution witnesses they turn hostile, a conviction would be in order if all the circumstantial evidence marshaled by the prosecution and produced before the court they points unmistakably to the guilt of the accused. So even in this case, even if the witnesses turn hostile, but the evidence so produced before the court, they are clearly showing that the accused is guilty of the crime, so he'll be convicted of the crime. And there are basically two aspects to fight against corruption. One is the legislative way, so the severity of the law and its application is one thing, and second is the strength of the public opinion that would help carry forward the campaign for a clean public life. So these two things are there, which we can say can help us in ensuring the reduction of this practice of corruption in public life. And also earlier the belief was that only the conclusive proof, namely the proof that does not have an iota of doubt in the minds of the courts, was required. But now this has been diluted, and this is the Supreme Court judgment all about, which is a step towards fighting corruption. Then we talk about the Supreme Court verdict is pending in this case, and recently we saw that Supreme Court transferred all the petitions regarding that was seeking legal recognition of same-sex marriage, and now the Supreme Court has asked the center to file its reply to all these petitions before February 15. So we'll be looking at what have been the steps taken by the Supreme Court so far when we talk about the rights of the homosexual couples and the people. So the Special Marriage Act of 1954, which allows a civil marriage for the couples who cannot marry under their personal law. So the people, they get married using the civil marriage clause under this Special Marriage Act of 1954 if their personal law does not permit their marriage. So we saw in 2017 Supreme Court delivering the case Puttaswamy judgment that was regarding the right to privacy, and we also saw the Navtej Johar ruling in 2018 that decriminalized homosexuality. So courts, they have shown the way to end the uncertainty regarding the rights of the LGBTQIA plus community, and petitioners, they have argued that denying the community the same rights as the heterosexual couples, it will violate the clutch of fundamental rights of life and liberty, including the rights which are mentioned in Article 14, 19, and 21 of the Constitution, and also it will be violating Article 16 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, to which India is a signatory. So, this Article 16 says that men and women of full age, without any limitation due to race, nationality, or religion, they have the right to marry and to found a family. So, this is what the petitions have to say, and also under sections 5, 6, and 7 for the Special Marriage Act, the parties to the marriage, they have to give prior notice to the marriage officer of the district, who has to then publicize the notice and call for objections. And even in the past, it has been witnessed that some marriages, some interfaith marriages have been prevented because, or we can say, in the name of honor of the community. So Allahabad High Court in 2021, it ruled that people who are marrying under the Special Marriage Act, they can choose not to publicize their union. So it is not a mandatory thing, and this has been delivered by the High Court of Allahabad. And it says that mandatorily publishing a notice of the intended marriage and calling for objections, it violates their right to privacy. So it is not a mandatory thing that they have to publicize their union and call for objections, if any, because it is violating their fundamental right to privacy. And going ahead, we need to promote more awareness campaigns so as to sensitize the society about the rights of all individuals, because all individuals are equal. And by legalizing the same-sex marriage, India can join the 30 odd countries which allow it and lead from front in Asia, where only Taiwan has legalized it. So that's how it can be, but let's see what is going to be the Supreme Court judgment on this issue. And I just want to discuss this one view which has been there regarding the Joshimat issue that is there. So Niti Srivastava, she has to say that who loses and who gains from such a tragedy that we are seeing in Joshimat. So the companies whose projects have been halted, they will suffer losses leading to crores, and coming to government, it will be scrambling to contain the situation. It will have to spend crores on evacuation and rehabilitation. And thirdly, the residents of the town who have been impacted, they will have to leave their homes in search of new ones. So this mad rush for development has not brought joy for anyone, be it the private companies, be it the businesses, be it the government, or be it the residents of that region. So if the projects they would have been assessed correctly before implementing them, and if they would have been planned in a scientific manner, the voices of the residents were heard, this ordeal could have been avoided, which we are now witnessing. So I thought that this has been written nicely in less words. Then coming to municipal corporations and their struggle for funds, so we see that the own revenue of the Indian municipal corporation was less than 1% of the GDP, which is, when we compare it with Brazil, it was 7%, in South Africa, it was 6%. So in India, it is less than 1%. And looking at data, so this graph is showing the property tax that was collected in different financial years across major cities. So you can see that although it was, we can say, decently high when we talk about Mumbai, Pune, and Hyderabad, but in Delhi, you see the collection level is very less. And this graph is showing the municipal corporation's own tax revenue in 2017-18 as a percentage of the state GDP. So you see that most of the states it is around rupee 0.5%, and even less than 0.5%. Only some states have it higher than 1%, which includes, we can say, Chhattisgarh, Chandigarh, Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Delhi. And this data is extremely important. So it is showing the percentage of the total expenditure of the municipal corporations in India in 2017-18. So you see that total expenditure, that is 70% of the total expenditure goes in the revenue expenditure. And yesterday only we talked about what is revenue expenditure, what is capital expenditure. And only we can say approximately 30% is there in the capital expenditure. So this needs to change, and obviously they require more funds, so that problem should also be resolved. And we got some idea about their working and the challenges that they are facing. Then talking about the 17th Pravasi Bharatiya Divas that is being celebrated in Indore in Madhya Pradesh. So a prime minister said that India will nurture and protect its diaspora spread across the world, and he termed every overseas Indian as Bharatvanshi. So the diaspora represented a powerful and capable India across the world, and he also said that you are the Rashtraduts of the India's heritage, of Make in India, of yoga, of Ayurveda, of India's cottage industries and handicrafts, and also the brand ambassadors of India's millets, since he said that 2023 has been declared the International Year of Millets. So that's how our Prime Minister addressed the celebrations. And Congress has to say that you need to declare the land subsidence that we are seeing in Joshimath region in Uttarakhand as a national calamity, and declaring that entire zone as a natural disaster zone, and immediately stop all the developmental projects. And in this picture also you can see how land subsidence has caused deep cracks in the entire region, and it has damaged 678 structures over there. So you can see the scale of the damage and the intensity of it, and all the damaged buildings, they will be now raised, and cracks are there on 678 structures, including the public infrastructure like roads also. So even traveling to this region is, we can say, very risky in today's situation. Then United Nations has to say that ozone layer is healing and it will completely mend by 2066. So we should be knowing that ozone layer is there over Antarctica region and in the upper stratosphere, and in the ozone hole we see things getting better, and the scientific assessment of the ozone hole is there once every 4 years. So we do not have anything important to discuss from the business page. Let's take up the Financial Express. So in Financial Express, we have two important articles to be discussed regarding agriculture. So first one is regarding India's wheat production that is going to touch a record of 112 metric tons this crop year. So India's wheat production in the current crop year, that is 2022-23, is likely to touch a record of 112 million a ton, an increase of around 5%. That is because of, we can say, favorable weather conditions, higher acreage, and sowing of climate resilient varieties. So India also banned the wheat exports for ensuring that we have adequate amount of domestic supplies, and this decision was taken in May last year. And talking about in which all states we cultivate wheat, so wheat is a rabi or a winter crop, and mostly it is grown in the states of Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh, and Madhya Pradesh. So they have repeated Rajasthan again, so here it should have been Madhya Pradesh. So these are the key, we can say, key states which grow wheat, and it is a rabi crop. And here we'll be looking at all this data that is given. So for the government in the coming budget, it becomes important to balance growth and the fiscal consolidation. So firstly, this graph is showing the real GDP growth to slow further. So it is showing the data for real GDP growth. So you can see how it is slowing down, and this is basically the first advance estimate for financial year 2023, and then you have projection for the financial year 2024. But when we look at the performance of real GDP growth in financial year 2021, it was minus 6.6%, but now in the current financial year, it has come into the positive territory and it is growing at 8.7%. And when we look at the trade growth, so it is easing. So we can say that some improvement and some progress is there going in the trade sector. So this dark blue bar graph is showing for the growth of exports. So you can see from July to August, it is increasing in size and height. And for imports, we can say they are also declining. And when we compare it to the figures in May 2022, we saw it drastically declining. So the imports are declining and exports are increasing. So that is a progressive development. And looking at the industrial recovery, that is still far away. And looking at the data talking about how manufacturing sector is performing, so the green color bar graph, you can see that it is very low in height, so not growing at a significant rate, and even it turned negative in August, and even in October it was in negative territory. And talking about the overall IIP, that is index of industrial production, so that has been also slowly progressing ahead. And talking about the interest rate, so that remains high at 6.25%. That is the repo rate fixed by the Monetary Policy Committee of RBI. And the capital expenditure push to continue. So the growth in the capex, that is the blue bars, you can see that they have been increasing since the financial year 2020, and in 2022 also it is peaked around 39.2%, and the budget estimate for the subsequent financial year is going to be lesser. So that is a budget estimate and not the real figure. And also when we talk about the investment led growth, so the fixed investment has been growing, and you can see the blue bars that represents the fixed investment level, and the green one is for the private sector. So private sector is also turned in the positive territory, and so has the, we can say, the government was already in a positive region, and it is almost, we can say, around 3.5%, but in financial year 2022 it was 2.6%. So that's all for today. Thank you for joining Ansarkari. I hope you have learned something new from today's analysis, and you'll be finding the PDF in the description box, and which is also very informative. Things are less repeated over there, so it has its own essence, so you can go through that. And again, thank you for joining Ansarkari. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel.